Welcome to my comparison between the BGVP Zero, an earphone that hasn't had much recognition. It's a dynamic driver EST, allegedly an EST with air quotes. The Shuoer Tape Pro, which is another dynamic driver EST. That's meant to be an electric, it's an electric, and that's meant to be magnetostatic. Look, on the images, they kind of look the same, and kind of the weird one in the bunch, because it's a BA as well, which is a Knowles, and a DD, and an EST from TDK. But in relation, these pair are the closest, because it's the closest combination of drivers. Out of all these, obviously these are the newest, the Shuoer Tape Pros. The Senfers come out earlier in the year, and I think the same for the Zero is a little bit earlier than that. MMCX, and obviously 2-pin in the middle. And let's get into fitment. So basic kind of technology speaking, let's get the same side. They are supposed to be the same technically, I think. This one you can change, obviously, if you swap them, it improve the bass response or make the bass response more. But anyway, comfort. These two are the best, I think. Not ultimately different kind of shape. But this kind of squarish kind of reminds me of the old KZ-ZS6, ZS5 kind of angular shape. But these pair beat this for comfort. Well, for my comfort anyway. Because it can stick, in your ears a bit. It's for you may or may not affect you, but for comfort, they are the worst. I'd say the Shuoers. These are not too bad. They're actually quite thin, as you can see. Obviously MMCX, mine's the black one, obviously. It states there, EST. Well, I'm not sure about that, but it's an electric driver, obviously right, left, very straightforward. That's the nozzle, so it's quite small. The nozzle on this one is, as you can see, if it focuses, much larger. And those are quite difficult to get the black tips on, which was included. But yeah, comfort, either of these really. Probably maybe slightly more for that, because it's a little bit thinner. I think slightly better for that. That's the worst for comfort. One thing to note, none of you really want to use some sort of amplifier to, it does improve them a bit. If you can technically you can use these off a phone, but I think they do benefit from an amplifier from to sound as good as they can sound, really. And let's get into imaging. Imaging is good on all three. EST seems to work fast. Well, EST drivers, they seem to act very fast. They've all got good micro details. None of these are bad for details. Let's speak to, because these pair are technically the closest. Low end, this is a sub-bass roll-off, so it's kind of mid-bass focused. On a graph you can see it drop. That's only one negative with this. It does have inflated mid-bass, a little bit less than, these have a little bit less than those. Like I said, you can change the screws and that gets you more mid-bass. But that's the one, and the negatives with the Zero is it's got sub-bass roll-off. Technically that probably has a little bit of roll-off. This is the least bass at the 3. It's also the most detailed, but I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, sub-bass roll-off has the most mid-bass at the 3. As you say, if you do power it does make it a bit cleaner, does make it a bit tighter. It uses a 10mm carbon nanotube driver, and you all have dynamic drivers in obviously as well. To focus. Very simple build. Out of all of these have the darkest presentation, because it's got the same kind of problem that has. These both have treble roll-off, but this seems a little bit more shouty in the upper mids than that. So out of all the three, quick kind of summary, this is the easiest to listen to, because that's a bit shouty. That one isn't, but it's brighter overall. But out of all the three, it's kind of the darkest, it's the bassest out of the three. But it has good stage, I think, because of the EST. It's kind of hard to describe, but it does work well. But it's missing a bit at the end, you know, the upper treble, which if you're treble head, you won't like those pair. Mids, this has like really pushed, like there's a peak at 2K and 3K, I think, from memory. It's a bit aggressive, it's a little bit shouty. Some people don't mind that, some people do. It is noticeable from the tracks I use, it's easy to spot. In this one it's less so, and in this it is kind of noticeable as well. But that's got better hardware, I think, than those two. So for low end, I'll do bass again. That has the most mid bass, but it's got sub bass roll off. That has less. The low end seems a little bit, I wouldn't say cleaner, but always amplify these, and it does help because it's trying to split power through multiple drivers. This has the least bass, but it just sound, it's the leanest one, but it does sound kind of clean. It's probably the cleanest sounding. Mids, the smoothest probably on the Zero, kind of a little bit shouty on that. And on here it is elevated, but it's not at a point where it's bad. It's there, but it's not aggressive. Treble, this is, I think, past 5K, it does dip. Kind of similar with the Shuoer Tape Pros. I think that's a driver limitation, because it looks like it needs another drive to do the highs, and I think that's what I've done with the Senfer. So there's a dynamic for the lows, and it looks like the EST kind of does mids for the look of it, and then the treble rolls off. But this one, these have a Knowles armature, so it kind of does the full spectrum more than those two. And these are the brighter set. The Senfers, out of all this pick, is probably the most complete, if that's probably the good word to say. But if you do like the full frequency range, the Senfers, surprisingly, out of their like kind of reputation, the Senfers do the most out of all three. And probably actually these are probably nearly the cheapest, strangely. I'm not sure if they're getting it discontinued or anything like that, but for the £50 I paid, and before this video I saw these for 57 from the same seller, so they're still kind of a good price. Obviously in 1111 they were the cheapest, but yeah, so good imaging at all. They've got that really weird EST. I wouldn't say weird, they all do really good micro details, but again, the Senfer I think wins for the most. It's probably the most technical one here out of the three. For sheer technical performance, the Senfer wins, and it's also the brightest with the leanest bass. So I wouldn't say it's neutral, it's probably more kind of neutral than the other two. The Zero, it's a bit, it colours the sound a bit too much. It probably colours the sound more than the Shuoers. The Shuoers are probably actually the most expensive here. In relationship, they shouldn't be, because they're competing against a company that's got something similar for less money, quite a bit less. They all have nice tips, and they all come in nice cables. And I think that's it. So for you, if you actually like treble, if you do like a brighter sound, the Senfers are the one. The BGVPs are technically the easiest, I'd say, to listen to. And the Shuoers, they do perform. Again, they do have good micro details, but the shape, I think the cost, the tuning's just a little bit off. Really, it could do with another revision, and I think they've got really, like I said in the review, they've got good potential. They just needs a bit of work. I still think they should use a shell that's more curved, like the other two. But out of all of these, I probably like Shuoer the Tape Pro the least. I think these are okay. Again, it's a bit dark sounding. If they could revise that, that would be, I think, really good. It needs a bit more upper treble, like those do. That needs the upper mid smoothing a touch and bringing the treble up, and then just leave it alone. The bass can be bloated when you change the screws around. Like I described in the video, you can see the whole. It's hard to see here, but you just change the basis once. And yeah, out of all these three, the Senfer is probably the most technical, has the most technical performance. Out of all these three, if you had to pick one, if there was all the same price, I'd still say the Senfers are the one. I'd still prefer a 2-pin, because some people have had the new Senfer KP580, which is the same connector, and they're actually out of phase, which is a problem obviously with MMCX. But yeah, they're all technically okay. I still think the Senfers are the best performer, and then followed probably by the Zero, and then followed by the Tape Pros. They're a little bit too dark. These two need a little bit of work, and then they got potential, but yeah, they aren't too bad. Like, I recommend powering them all, with an amplifier. And I think that's it, really. Anything as you want to know, just let me know in the comments as usual. I want to do a comparison with these three because they're kind of different and more unique. They are hybrids, but they're not like it's balanced armature, multiple balanced armature, and then a dynamic like a typical hybrid. The DD EST height combinations is a bit different, and they do need power to basically, for that to work properly. I think you don't need anything really powerful. Just one of the audio adapters I normally recommend should be fine. Just a little bit more power, and yeah, I still want to try the Senfer MT300s. It's a planar and a BA, but it's meant to be really neutral. And yeah, so at the pick, that I think the Senfers are probably technically the best. They are the leanest in sound, the brightest overall sound, but I think out of all these three, that's the one I'd probably pick. And yeah, thanks for watching. Take care.